and welcome to Punters Inside Run. I'm Matthew Campbell. Great to have your company once again. The racing last week was sensational. It continues. Mick Sharkie joins me. Shark,
Matty,
what a weekend it was last weekend. Group 1s keep coming at us this weekend.
Sensational weekend last weekend, but it just keeps getting bigger and better into Cox Plate weekend this weekend. Then we've got the Melbourne Cup Carnival just around the corner. It is a brilliant time of year. Winners galore this weekend.
Winners galore. That is our program. Nick H will join us to talk the Group 1 Spring Champion Stakes from Randwick, and of course the Manikato Group 1 on Friday night, and the Cox Plate. James Lamb will join us right here in the studio, but right now we're at the barriers. At the barriers, before we talk about the Cox Plate, gee, what about last week? The crowds at Randwick and Caulfield, and the races were unbelievable.
I've been to Royal Ascot, I've been at Flemington when Mackay Diva won her third, and there was 100,000 something people there, and the roar and the atmosphere on those days. What about watching the Everest? Now, you were there, mate.
Yeah. The atmosphere was just first class. It was very, very loud. And the build-up, they've got that right.
Yeah, well, the music on when the horses have left and gone out to the barriers, and that song, what was it, Sweet Caroline or something like that, to get everybody G'd up, something we all like to sing and know the words to, just gets everybody focused and in that right frame of mind. I thought it looked like a great day. It's certainly now on the list to get up there and experience it myself.
Well, that leads us into the Cox Plate, because there's always been a big build-up into our best weight for age race. What about this year? There's a lot of talk always of the fact that it's the 19th race out of 20, racing Friday night, and we get to the Cox Plate at race 9, and there's rain forecast for Friday and Saturday while we're racing.
Yeah, tricky one for Marty Sign and his track team, but I wouldn't have thought they'd have much water in the track in the lead up in these few days coming up to the Cox Plate Carnival. So if the rain doesn't arrive Friday afternoon like predicted, we might be on really quick ground Friday night, which could suit leaders, and that might compact that inside section again, so when the rain does come on Saturday, you still might be in the best ground if you're in those first three lanes. So, as usual, we'll have to wait and see how the Valley plays, but there has been a tendency for it to be on speed inside so far this season.
Now, the factors we want to look at here, Sharkie has drawn the inside, so that's the perfect scenario for Sharkie, isn't it, to just get on the rail and go bang. We've got Animo, who will just be in behind, and of course we've got an international visitor who, of late, if you take Winks out of the picture, have been very good in the Cox Plate.
Yeah, absolutely they have, and he's got the right form. He's a European three-year-old with really good European three-year-old form. He comes through the French Derby. He's got form around Deauville Legend, who's the reigning Melbourne Cup favourite. So I think the horses he's been racing around are super competitive in anything they raced in around the world. So he's got to be in the picture here for a Cox Plate.
Now, the horses that Animo's beaten so far, they can't just turn up and do the same thing, can they? They've got to do something different to beat Animo.
That's it, because they keep going to the races. He finds a way to win, whereas they keep doing what they're doing and they're getting beaten. I think if they were going to get him, it was probably last start at Caulfield when he lost 2.5 to 3 lengths coming around that corner. He still picked himself up off the canvas and got the job done. He's blessed with a brilliant will to win. And that takes you so far in the Cox Plate. Remember Kingston Town, Matty, all those years ago?
Can't win.
When he couldn't win? He did.
He did.
Maybe Animo's that horse.
You talked about El Bodegon. Is it the right profile, and where do you see El Bodegon?
I think it is the right profile. I think he'll be in the first sort of 3 or 4 on settling, and that's going to be an advantage. He can ride the speed. He's a very lightly framed horse. He only weighs about 420 kilos, so he's like a little whippet getting around the valley. I think they'll take off as they get sort of midway around that home turn. He'll try and go and force it and kick a little gap around them on the corner. He'll be a hard horse to run down. All
right, we come to the important part. Who wins the Cox Plate for you?
I think El Bodegon will win it. I think it'll be heartbreak again for Animo. I love Animo. He's such a good horse to watch as far as our local weight for age horses are concerned. But what we've seen consistently in the last probably decade or more is when these European horses come, when they're the right ones, they usually get the job done.
All right, well, I've got Animo on top of El Bodegon, and I'll throw in Sharkie. So no real surprises there, but it should be a wonderful race. And that is at the barriers. Plenty more to come.
The betting brand for sports fans. That's betr. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome to Racing at Melbourne here on Punters Inside Run. I'm Matthew Campbell. I'm with Mick Sharkie, and this is a very special moment. Making his television debut, James Lamb from punters.com.au. Welcome, Lammy.
Thank you, Matty. It's lovely to be here.
And now we've got you here. You're here for a reason, and that's to find us some winners, in particular in Melbourne, but it's a big weekend in Melbourne. Do you like the Friday night into the Saturday?
It makes things tough if it does rain on the Friday, which is looking likely at this stage. I do love attending the Friday night because I always have to work on Cox Plate Day. But yeah, it does make sort of getting a handle on the track a bit harder. You don't know where they're going to go. And as Sharkie mentioned earlier, if it doesn't rain, the rail could be red hot.
All right, now we've discussed the Cox Plate. We know what Shark thinks. He's with the visitor. Your thoughts on the Cox Plate?
Yeah, I can't go past Animo. I've been with him the whole way through. He obviously got very close in this race last year and he hasn't gone backwards. He's won 4 Group 1s since. And yeah, I don't think the usual suspects can beat him now that he's drawn so well. I think that was the only way they could possibly beat him is if he drew badly, but he's drawn barrier 4. He's going to get the perfect run in transit. So yeah, the El Bodegon is the X factor. I can't get around him as a little Shetland pony. I know it's rich for a short, stocky bloke to be potting the horse in stature, but yeah, just the hustle and bustle of the Cox Plate has me a little bit concerned about El Bodegon.
What about Sharkie? Drawn 1. I know face value, everyone says, oh, Barry 1, that looks great. Is there a chance if Alligator Blood comes across, El Bodegon comes across, he could get shuffled back and be in an absolute vault searching for a key to get out at the 200? Yeah,
there's obviously a bit of pressure on Jamie Carr to make sure he does anticipate the jump because, yeah, if he ends up 2 or 3 back on the fence and it does rain, that is not where you want to be. But I've got him leading, and that first 200 is going to be really interesting with the import and Alligator Blood to see who does get that spot outside the leader. All right, mate, give us your top 3 for the Cox Plate. Yeah, I'm going with Animo. I just think he has all the runs on the board, and he's the bomb-proof galloper. Sharkie for 2nd, and I've got Iron Thunderstruck for 3rd. He'll be out the back, and if it does rain, he sort of gets out wide, might find the A ground in the straight. But yeah, Gold Trip may be a sneaky one for first 4s if we do get that rain and it's worse than a soft 6. All right,
now let's move back to Friday night, the Manikato. Did you find this a bit more difficult?
No, I reckon it's a race in 2. I think Bella Nipotina is the horse who absolutely loves the Valley, beaten the lip in this race last year. She's had 7 starts here for 6 top 2 finishes, so she's just horses for courses. And Paul Laley is obviously the main danger, the class horse, and they're both drawn pretty well. September Run may be the blowout if the leaders do overdo it, and she is another one who might get to the right part of the track.
So that's your numbers.
Yep.
You've got Bella Nipotina to beat Palali to beat September Run. Shark, yep. What did you think Manikato was?
I'm with Rothfire.
Really?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think he was unlucky last time. He sort of just got into a bit of a bumping duel there coming around the corner, which you can't afford to do at the Valley.
Especially over 1,000.
Yeah, he stayed on. Paul Ailey, I think, is the obvious danger. I'm throwing Best of Bordeaux in. I reckon of the 3-year-olds, he might be the strong one that gets the 1,200 right out, whereas Coolangatta, probably want to see her do it against the older horses.
You're just showing your penchant for French wine. That's all you're doing. Bonjour. I've got Palali on top. I think September Run runs better second up, and we know that we'll need a bit of luck to win the race, but did get the luck to win the William Reid at Group 1 at the Valley before. And also I've got Coolangatta. I tossed up between Bella Nipotina and Coolangatta. I mean, the stable probably has something in the top 3, so that's the Manikato for me. All right, what about your best? Let's start with best on Saturday.
Best on Saturday. Look, it's dual nom, so I'm hoping it stays in Melbourne and doesn't. It comes to Melbourne and doesn't stay in Sydney. That's race 4, number 3, Wallinga Beast. It does have that Best of Bordeaux form line, and I think they got the tactics badly wrong last time. I'm not alone in saying that. They handed up on a red-hot leaders track there at Randwick and was chasing Best of Bordeaux the whole way. Held its ground pretty well, but I really like that Sydney form coming to this race. Zook Gotcha, In Secret, those horses, they would be very short in a race like this. So keen on Wallinga Beast.
Anything else on Saturday?
On Saturday, I don't mind if we do get the rain. Douceur, I've been sucked into this horse a few times over the journey, but if we do get the rain, it loves heavy tracks, and it's a real improver it can have a few flat runs to start its prep and then spike in performance, which we've seen second up in the past. It probably should have won this track and distance last campaign in the Group 3. Very similar race, so I'm hoping Paddy Payne can work his magic second up. And
as we finish up, another one for Friday night away from the Manikato.
Yeah, Regards Marie, race 2, number 3. It's a race that's full of horses who are either out of form or don't win out of turn, your Sosie Bonds and those types of horses. Regards Marie was poor last time, but third up, 5 starts, 3 wins and 2 close-up finishes. So I'm backing Nick Ryan to turn this horse's form around as well.
It goes okay, Nick Ryan. Mate, great to have you on the program. If you get a few right, we'll have you back next week.
All right, sounds good.
James Lamb from punters.com.au. That was racing in Melbourne. Stay with us. There's plenty more on Punters Inside Run.
The betting brand for sports fans. That's better. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome to Racing in Sydney on Punters Inside Run. I'm joined by Mick, Sharkie, and it's a great pleasure to have Nick Hluchaniuk, or Nick H as we like to call him, from punters.com.au. Join us once again. Nick, we've got Group 1 racing again at Randwick. How did you rate the track? What are you expecting? Because last week it was a huge day there. We had a heavy, but it raced beautifully.
It did indeed, and thankfully the sun was out last Saturday. But as you mentioned, played beautifully. Look, a few showers around again, so we're probably back to a heavy range. Rail goes out 4, but hopefully again, it's a fair track.
Nick, we get to test that Caulfield Guineas form in the Spring Champion in the Group 1 versus the Gloaming form. Sydney horses have been doing pretty well in Melbourne. What do you make of Elliptical going north?
Yeah, it's a really tough one because we're obviously now trying to transfer this mile form to the 2000. So I like that Caulfield Guineas form. It's just whether a horse like Elliptical gets the 2000. Most of them have that query on them. Elliptical's breeding, it's a bit of a mismatch because you've got Done Deal, the sire, but it's out of a sprinting mare. So it's a bit of a guessing game.
So when you're doing the form for this sort of race, Nick, how far back have you gone of what's happened in the past as far as breeding and whether they handle tracks to get the 2000? Because that's the question for this race every year, isn't it? Who gets the 2000?
It is. So obviously you've got to look at the breeding. Also got to trust your eye a little bit on what you're seeing. And in this case, I'm just going for a horse that I know likes Randwick and likes the wet track.
All right, mate, I'll just jump in there. So what have you got then for your tips for the Spring Champion?
It is Williamsburg on top, as I mentioned, just because of his love of Randwick and a wet Randwick track. Had to go to Warwick Farm, obviously, when the Gloaming got transferred. I thought the run there was pretty good. So I got him as the one to beat, but obviously that Caulfield Guineas form is probably the stronger form line. It's just who you're trusting to get the 2000.
Shark, well, you're going with the form then for the Melbourne form for your tips.
I am, yeah. I'm backing Elliptical. I'm really wary of Graham Rogerson and Sharp and Smart. He hasn't been visually impressive in his first 2 wins, but he's won them both. And this is the race he's sort of earmarked for a big improvement heading towards a derby. So Roger's a pretty canny trainer. So I think we have to pay attention to that. And Williamsburg, I'm including him next best.
I've thrown Williamsburg and Macho Latte in, but where do you see She's Extreme in the race, Nick?
Yeah, I think they will be positive here on the filly. A little bit hard to work out how she's been going. I'd say she's a little bit below what they would have hoped, but I think there was a sign there last start over the mile that perhaps the 2000 is what she's looking for. As I mentioned, I think they'll be positive, put her up on the speed, and that gives her a chance. All
right, mate, what about some other bets that we should be following at Randwick on the weekend?
Yeah, like in a race 5, number 4 Diamil on the quick backup, and I think that's key. Positive post-race comment from James McDonald just mentioned that this horse was just lacking that little bit of fitness. So I think now up to a mile third up, Diamil is going to be very hard to beat in race 5. And a little bit of value too late in the card. Race 10, number 4, Coal Crusher. Has the blinkers going on second up. I think that will be a key to a bit of improvement.
Nothing like a tip in the last to keep you going for the day. I don't mind that at all. Nick, as always, thanks, mate. Look forward to talking to you next week. Happy punting.
Thanks, Matty. All the best on the weekend.
Nick H from punters.com.au. We'll take a break because coming up, we're going to recap all the tips for both Melbourne and Sydney on the big call.
The betting brand for sports fans. That's better. Gamble responsibly.
Time for the big call on Punters Inside Run, where we recap all the tips from all our experts. Shark, why don't you take us away with James Lamb's tips?
Okay, James Lamb in the Cox Plate. He is with Animo on top from Zaki, and I'm thunderstruck. His Manicato Stakes top 3. Bella Nipotina on top from Paul Laley and September Run. Now, his best, Matty, on Friday night at the Valley is Regards Marie in race 2, number 3. Best on Saturday, Willinga Beast, race 4, number 3. And best value on Saturday, Douceur. Race 10, number 4.
All right, Nick H at Randwick, the Spring Champion Stakes. He likes Williamsburg ahead of She's Extreme and Manzois. His best bet at Randwick is in race number 5, number 4, Diamil. His next best is Williamsburg, race 8, number 4. We heard about that already. And the best value, race 10. You've got to wait till the end. But number 4, Coal Crusher. More importantly, Michael Sharkie, your tips for the Cox Plate.
I think the Cox Plate's going overseas again, Matty.
You do,
Bodegon. Yes, El Bodegon on top from Animo. And Gold Trip, I think if the rain comes, he'll really love that and he'll run well on the backup. Spring Champion, Elliptical from Sharp and Smart and Williamsburg. Manicato Stakes, Rothfire. It's cause a little upset ahead of Paul Alien Best of Bordeaux. My best at the Valley Saturday is Greece in race 4. Fingers crossed the rain doesn't come.
They'll scratch it if the rain comes.
They will, yeah. And next best is Virtuous Circle, race 7, the Vars, leading into the Derby.
Okay, my tips in the Cox Plate, I've gone Animo ahead of El Bodegon and Zaki. In the Spring Champion Stakes, She's Extreme ahead of Williamsburg and Matcha Latte. In the Manikato, Polali September Run, and then Coolangatta for third. My best bet at the Valley, I've just got the one, race 2, number 4, around $7.50 Shark, Ashford Street. Third up, we'll really appreciate the track, and I'm expecting a fair bit from Ashford Street at that sort of price.
Ready to go.
That's our Cox Plate show, mate. Thank you very much as always.
I can't wait. Thank you, Matty. Let's get into it and back a few winners.
And thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe below for all our episodes on Punters Inside Run. We'll see you next time.